Welcome to the WOW weekly update. So, what's been happening in the markets? What's been happening in the economy? Well, some might say not a whole lot, and let's have a quick look through it. So, in the macro environment, you might say that not a whole lot has happened, we'll say, in the last week. There's still a lot of indicators out there that would suggest that the US is either in recession or heading that direction. Um, of course, we've seen the likes of Powell from the Fed talking almost certainly now about reducing interest rates in September. And it's just a case of by how much and will there be more to follow in the rest of the year. While all that's happening in crypto space in general, Bitcoin has been pretty much trending sideways over the last week. No major moves, the usual volatility, and it really is a case of where to from here and what is the potential to cause that, or what should we be doing with that information. So first of all, let's just have a look, I guess, at what the charts are telling us. And again, just be really clear, I'm not a chartist. These are just my own musings, and I certainly wouldn't use them to be making any financial decisions, and I'm not a financial advisor. But if you look at just in general terms in the long-term scale, this is the daily chart. So each bar here, the 1 day, or represents 1 day. You can see in general terms, the overall channel between these two blue lines is in a generally downward curve, just vaguely downward, particularly on the higher bar. You can see since it's made its all-time high, it's made a couple of efforts at getting up there or even maybe attempting to surpass it, but each one of those in turn has been a little bit lower, a little bit lower. So it's lacking that energy to even hit that all-time high, not to mind to break through it. On the other side, we see that each time it's hitting a low, it's hitting a lower low as it goes. So this would suggest in general terms that there's an overall weakness there. But that, of course, doesn't mean that it can't take off at some point in time. And indeed, that would be my expectation that it will. Generally, when it goes into these, whatever direction that the charts are going before it enters into this channel, when it comes out of the channel, it will continue in that same direction. So obviously in this situation, you'd be talking about whenever it breaks out of here, that it would actually break on the upside. Um, if that were to happen, of course, that's would be the expectation of most. But where does it go first? Well, if we go into the 4 hourly, which I'll just click on that now, and we see this channel, which again, I'll just go back one. This channel here, you can see here on the right-hand side between the two yellow lines. And when I click on the 4 hour, it just brings us in, brings that more into focus. Again, you can see this. There's been a general channel here, and I actually drew these lines when on this channel when this was done. So it was drawn back here on the 23rd, and I drew my line from here to here and just extended it on. I did the same from here through here and extended it on. Why is that of any interest? Well, you can see that after that, it made an attempt to hit the top of that channel and move. It didn't quite get there. And in the meantime, made a, significant retracement back to here. And bearing in mind, this line was drawn from, back here. You can see that it pretty much has bounced along that line almost exactly. A couple of slight piercings through it, but in general terms, it's held that line. Where will that go from here? Well, again, just like before, the general direction before it goes into the channel often is an indicator of where it goes after. And so if that were to hold true, while this might bounce around more here, there is that possibility, of course, it breaks down. And if it breaks down through here and makes a significant break, maybe a retracement and then further down, then it would be likely that it moves its way down to the next line of resistance, which would be on this blue line. And of course, depending on when that would happen, the further and the longer that takes to happen, the more likely it is to come down to maybe the 43 mark, which again is a number I've been talking about for a while. Of course, none of that might happen. It might take off tomorrow and go off to the races. But what is it that would cause that? Why would it suddenly, having not had the energy to do that for the last 6 months, why would it suddenly take off? There would have to be something really positive or something that, why would it move off in that really strong direction? Well, again, of course, as mentioned earlier, we know that Powell is talking about reducing interest rates. And generally, when interest rates are being reduced, it means, borrowing money becomes cheaper. And that's usually good for risk on assets like of course, the stock market and then, of course, the crypto market. But reducing interest rate also indicates something else, a sign of a weakness of the economy. And so while all along they've been holding the interest rates high in order to fight inflation, that inflation is gradually coming down now, and it's under 3%, about 2.9 in the last at the last point of contact. And now, they're hoping, of course, it makes its way down to what its target is of 2%. And if they're confident that it's now moving in that direction, the other thing they take into account is the jobs market. And of course, the job market had a big revaluation just a few days ago or last week, where they've literally reduced the number of jobs that they claimed that they had been created, which was in around the 2.9 million mark. They reduced that by about 820,000, which is a pretty significant move. So, in other words, the jobs market that they were claiming was so strong, and the retail spending sector that they were saying was so strong, and therefore we had a good economy, therefore we wouldn't be reducing rates, now looks like it's significantly weaker than the data that they had been using would suggest. And so what does that mean? Well, it looks like now it's almost a certainty that there's going to be at least a 0.25% interest rate reduction in September. And many commentators are saying that it could be 0.5% or more. And certainly between September, including September into the end of the year, that it could be reduced by anything from a total of 1 to 1.5%, which would be very significant interest rate reductions. And again, you would expect that that would be very positive for risk on assets. However, I think if they aggressively reduce interest rates at those sort of rates, that's a very clear signal to the world that they do believe their economy is in trouble. And if you're telling the world that your economy is in trouble, that usually isn't good for the likes of your stock market and other things. So there's many factors in play and lots of possible outcomes that could happen. What is the likely outcome, in my own view, and it's only my own personal opinion, with again no financial advice intended here, but what is the possibilities when you look at the likes of the charts and look at the macroeconomics of what's out there and look at what's happening within crypto? Are we likely to, with all that in mind, that we just take off, and just because interest rates have been reduced that we suddenly take off? I don't think so. Particularly when you take the macro environment in play. And of course, then the whole political thing has to be, whether you're political or not, and I'm not, you have to take some notice of that. Because if you look at the US, of course, two main candidates are Harris and Trump. What do we know about both of them when it comes to, for example, crypto and risk on assets in general? Well, the Republicans would generally be seen as a more positive outcome when it comes to business and therefore markets in general. Um, on top of that, we have seen that Trump has been talking really positively about crypto over the last number of months. And now that Robert Kennedy has joined with him, also who has been speaking really positively about Bitcoin in general and, of course, crypto, then it would suggest that if they were to be elected, that that would be a positive thing for crypto. But of course, maybe they're just running for the votes and saying what they say for the votes. Well, if you look back at when Trump was in power last, which of course is 4 to 8 years ago, during that time, in the main, he was relatively neutral, but certainly not aggressively against. And there's an awful lot of positive stuff has happened in crypto space in the meantime over the last 4 years. And again, like I said, it's coming out extremely positively now, including having his own NFTs, etc., and holding quite a bit of crypto himself. Well, then it would suggest that it would be positive outcome for crypto if the likes of Trump were to get in power. What about on the other side, on the Democratic side? Well, Harris as vice president over the last 4 years, and of course in the Biden administration, they have overseen what the SEC have been doing. And Gary Gensler has literally been going after anybody and everybody who has anything to do with crypto. The SEC has gone after Consensus, Binance, Kraken, Coinbase, all the big hitters of the US in the crypto space. They've literally gone after them. And the most recent one to join that illustrious crew is now OpenSea. They're now going after OpenSea. So apparently it appears they are now seeing NFTs as securities as well. So, Harris hasn't really come out with any sort of concrete idea as to what they're going to do when it comes to crypto, but she has been there as vice president, which has overseen an SEC that has been extremely negative on crypto. Is that likely to change if she used to come back into power on November 4th? No one knows for sure, but I can only look at what has happened so far. So, again, the sideways action that we've seen for the last couple of months, a lot of that is built on uncertainty. And of course, there's uncertainty as who's going to win the election. So what happens from here? Well, I think, again, the incumbent presidential candidates, being Biden and Harris, it seems to me that again they've been fairly negative towards crypto, but in general if they want to stay in power, they're going to want to be seen to have a strong economy. If you lead a weak economy into elections, more often than not, that election will go against you. So, of course, they're going to want to do whatever it takes to appear to have a strong economy on the way into that. How can they do that now? Well, first of all, put out economic data that seems good, even if it might not necessarily be so. And there's an awful lot of indicators that would suggest it's not. But also, reducing interest rates would be seen as something that might stimulate the economy. But I believe that number one, that will be a signal to the world that the economy is struggling. Therefore, I think we see the pullback first. If that were to happen, that would agree with the charts where this would have its pullback first. I think in the middle to end of September, that is very possible, as September can often be a negative month in general risk on assets, including the stock markets. But then, if I think the thing that could really turn this around and really have this move is the money printers come on. I think it's increasing liquidity in a major way is the possibility that could really drive the overall markets in an upward curve. If they start to do that in advance of the elections, and then we get, of course, the certainty after elections of who's actually the president, then there is the potential for that to be the catalyst for this bull run to really take off, and we could really see it rock and roll from middle to end of November right into the first quarter and beyond of next year. And that is potentially something that could happen. Of course, none of this might happen in this order. It could be completely and utterly different to that, but that's my synopsis of what might happen. If that were to happen, how would you prepare for it? What should you do now? Well, I wouldn't say it's a time to be investing into the market right now, but certainly if there was a big pullback, well, then I would suggest it could be an opportune time to get in and potentially get a lot of the crypto projects at a much cheaper rate. So what should you be looking at? Well, most people would believe that the likes of gaming, real world assets, DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure, and AI would be ones to back. How would you find the right projects in those areas? Well, in CoinGecko, and you can do the same CoinMarketCap and others. If you go into cryptocurrencies here and click on categories, you can simply scroll down into the various areas. So, for example, let's say you want to go into look and see what AI projects were there. Here they are, artificial intelligence, and you can go into and see all the various crypto projects that have some involvement in AI. For example, Near Protocol is a layer one protocol that is emphasizing its structures for AI. And so if you wanted a layer one that was very specific towards AI, maybe that's something that worth looking at. Artificial Superintelligence Alliance is actually 3 different AI projects that have come together. Maybe that's a way of having money in the AI in general. But maybe you want something with a lesser market cap. They're in around the 3 billion mark. Of course, we've talked about a cash, cloud for computing of AI, AIOZ, which we've mentioned many times before. You might want to look into those. But equally, I would look and go down into these various other AI-driven crypto projects and see, can you find a project that maybe at a lower market cap with more upside if they've got everything else in place? So how do you prepare? Increase your knowledge in these areas, do a little bit of research, and find projects that you believe, if you can get them at a cheaper price than they are now, if there is a big pullback, that you can get a really good entry price in, and the upside then is much bigger. But it might be that you just go for the top 2 or 3 in here. That's another way of doing it. Less potential upside, but slightly safer bet. But of course, all crypto is very much high risk. Other categories, we mentioned the likes of decentralized infrastructure. So if you go down to here, for example, again, same thing, you can click in there and you can see the various projects. And again, the likes of Filecoin will be very well known. Arweave, decentralized storage mainly for long term. Helium, for example, is decentralizing internet access through hubs throughout the world. So there's lots of very interesting projects that you could look into here and get a better understanding and knowledge of, so that you'd be well positioned that if you have dry powder or you can pull money together between here and a potential pullback, you could position yourself extremely well for what I believe will be the biggest bull market we've ever seen. And likewise, you can continue on. You can go into the various categories. Of course, there's gaming is another big one. And you can just do the same thing again. Gaming is here. And again, in gaming, Immutable X is, again, a blockchain that has very much built themselves around being the one for gaming. Again, you can do your research on that and see if you believe that to be true. And if you do, then maybe that's one to get behind. The Gala Games is a whole raft of different games. So instead of betting on just one, maybe you go in and you look into Gala Games and see if that ticks the boxes for you. There's loads more. I'm not specifically saying pick any one of these. I'm just going, these are interesting ones that at least would be worth looking into. Illuvium is an actual game, so it's an individual game. So you're betting on one. Is that a good idea to do? Who knows? But if you like it very much and you think it's got huge upside, well then maybe it is. And at a market cap of 265 in a pullback that will probably come back significantly more, maybe that's a good one to get involved in. So there's loads and loads, and I'm not saying that's a good one and the next one isn't. I'm just saying now is a good time to get your knowledge on these and have a good idea of ones that you'd like to back if there were a big pullback to come and offer that opportunity. Of course, there's real world assets, and again, you can find them down here. And I won't go through them all. There's many real, very good projects in the real world assets. And so there's lots of very positive things to look at. Now, otherwise, you might like to look into things like layer ones and what are the best layer ones out there. Of course, there's many of them in the top sort of 10. Obviously, everybody knows the likes of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, Solana, and so on, and they've all done really well. One that has been of a great interest to me over the last while, and I've done numerous videos on this, is the Ton network, because this is backed unofficially, if you like, by Telegram. Telegram has 900 million users, and if on this layer one, which they believe is fast and is cheap and it's very accessible, and as they build on that and make it more accessible and bring more into that, of course, the upside is huge because they have access to 900 million people that they can feed directly into this. So good for crypto in general, from the point of view of it's a way of feeding, a very big percentage of the planet into crypto in general, into a blockchain that they have a very direct interest in. Of course, there's been big news around the Ton network this week when its founder and CEO, Pavel, was arrested when he flew into France. Why? Their stated reason is because they say that, and he has been charged, but he's been charged not because of something that he's done specifically himself, but they're claiming that on their platform they have allowed, bad actors to act, and without reporting on them. And of course, the whole concept of Telegram is that it's private, and that you can interact on there in a private way, and that they don't give up your information to the likes of U.S. governments or otherwise, or other intelligence. So he's been charged for that. Is that the real reason? Well, if it is the real reason that they're stating that he's allowing nefarious activities happening on Telegram, well, the same accusations have been directed towards Instagram and Facebook for many years. Yet, for some reason, Mark Zuckerberg hasn't been arrested. What's the difference? Is there double standards there? Or is it that just one will give all the information to the US intelligence at will and the others doesn't? Who knows? But ultimately, I think it's absolutely, it's a fight against privacy, which is not something that most people would be happy about. And that's certainly what it appears like to me. But of course, that's just my own thoughts. But on that, does that make Ton a good or a bad idea? Well, certainly for me, it's something I'll be keeping a very close eye on if there was a big pullback. If you want to get into a layer one, I think there's a lot of potential upside in that one. What else have we seen? Yeah, as mentioned, we've seen the SEC go after OpenSea now. So yet again, more attacks on crypto in general terms. But from here, where do we go, and what's the thing to do? Well, ultimately, I still believe that yes, there's a pullback to happen. Again, that might never happen. So certainly don't make any decisions based on that information. Do your own research and get your own financial advice as to what you want to do. But for me personally, what I'm doing is I'm researching projects that I would really like to be able to invest in, but at much better prices than now. If the big pullback happens, I know which ones I'm ready to go for, and get the dry powder ready for that. My suggestion to people is at least have something available to put into these if that's your inclination. Do the research, find the projects you like, find the ones you'd like if there is a big pullback, and if it were to happen, get active. And on that note, I will say Berkshire Hathaway, which has for the first time been now valued at $1 trillion, and of course, its leader, he has been applauded by how he invests, that being, of course, Warren Buffett, and how he invests is take action when action is required, but also know when to do nothing. For me personally, I think now is the time to do nothing from the actual investment side, but it's certainly a good time to educate yourself on what the possibilities are and what the upsides might be when that time comes, if that time comes. So with that, I'll sign off and say that's the market update for WoW. Hopefully you found it useful. Very happy to see any comments or questions off the back of watching the video. Please interact. Let us know what you're thinking. What are your thoughts? Whether they're same or different, and what your plans are from here. With that, talk to you all very soon.